Welcome back to another episode of 40 Facts about the 40K universe. I am your host, Gersh1, and you are watching One Mind Syndicate. Today, we continue talking about the warp as we get into the warp entities that you would find inside the Immaterium. Now, these are not your common, typical, chaos demons and whatnot. It's going to get a little more flavorful. So let's get into 40 facts about the warp entities. The warp, though a realm of pure psychic energy that is hostile to all forms of organic life from real space, is home to its own form of life, sentient and otherwise. Many of these creatures are not sentient, but depend upon the absorption of psychic energy to survive, and thus naturally draw to the psychic presence of the mortals in real space. Such creatures include the vampire, also known as Vraikolaka or a Nosferatu. In ancient Terran lore, as well as in different regions of the galaxy, it is a member of an intelligent species of other dimensional entities that has the ability to appear to others in any form they choose. They become entrenched within the legends of old Earth, and were later regarded as being discredited myths as well as legends. In reality, the vampires of legend were real beings who infiltrated many societies across the galaxy, where they masqueraded as chosen races and sought positions of power. They are polymorphic parasites preying upon the life force of their hosts. Vampires are able to radically alter their metabolism in order to resemble the creature amongst whom they dwell. Their natural shape, if such can be called, is a bat-like, although approximately human size. At some point in the 41st millennium, a warp-spawned vampire and its servants had risen to power on the Imperial Hive World of Cephestian IV. The Black Templar chapter of Space Marines is known to have battled these creatures, with the future High Marshal Helmbrick slaying the entity, and through its act earning induction into the ranks of the Sword Brethren. Another warp entity is the Psyche Neuen. They are insectoid creatures that resemble huge, spiny wasps. They are drawn to the mental emanations of unprotected, badly injured, or new psychers, whose minds they attack for the obscene purpose of gestating their progeny. What makes this creature so dangerous is its reproductive cycle. The female Psyche Neuen is drawn to the psychic emanation in real space, and has a rudimentary fusion of telepathic and telekinetic powers. When fertile, the female psychically projects a clutch of its eggs into the brain of a psychically active host, with the unprotected mind, vulnerable to the powers of the ether. The eggs are small, no larger than a grain of sand, but by morning the following day, they will hatch and begin to feed on the host's brain. At first, the victim feels nothing more than a mild headache. By the afternoon, he will be in agony, raving and insane, as his brain is devoured from the inside out. By nightfall, he will be dead, his skull a withering mass of plumbed maggots. Once infected by a Psyche Neuen, a psyker slowly loses intelligence, and his or her appearance slowly changes until they are either killed by the emerging Psyche Neuen larva, or their instability unleashes other psychic perils, such as insanity or even demonic possession. Psyche Neuen have three well-known phases of their life cycle: the larval phase, the adult phase, and the infected phase. Larval Psyche Neuen are typically puny creatures whose main strength is their ability to infect others. Injuries can trigger a sudden metamorphosis to its adult form. Their small size makes them easy to kill, but they usually occur in large numbers, making an infection of Psyche Neuen difficult to control, particularly if there are any latent psychers around for them to infect. Once in adult form, the Psyche Neuen are relatively easy to destroy, having no compulsion to hide. However, they are still dangerous because they are capable of breeding more of their kind within the minds of nearby unprotected psychers. Over short distances, up to 100 meters, all psychers are vulnerable whether protected or not. The adult Psyche Neuen is vividly colored in yellow and black. Its wings are transparent. Grubs are white and generally maggot-like in appearance, though Psyche Neuen of the Prospero Strain are said to resemble spiny grubs. The adult is 2.5 meters long. Grubs reach a maximum size of about half a meter before they pupate. Adult Psyche Neuen are much more dangerous than their larval brethren. They are stronger, faster, tougher, and more perceptive than humans, and capable of flight and detecting minds. A single adult Psyche Neuen is a significant threat to any and every nearby sentient being. Psyche Neuen have been known to have various distinct genres, of which 3 have been identified: the Maro strain, the Heroclix strain, and the long-extinct Prospero strain. The Maro strain is deemed the most dangerous. The Maro strain was first identified by the Ordoxenos Inquisitor, Ark Ashton, during a heavy infestation at the mining penitentiary on the ice world of Mara in the Heroclix sector. Although the Mara facility was subsequently decommissioned, the tale of the Ice Station massacre remains a favored dark fable among the sector's spacefarers. Since then, confirmed incidences of Mara strain infection have occurred on the Heroclix sector, in the worlds of Dusk and Pellucida 5, as well as several vessels transiting near Mara, although these incidences remain thankfully very few. The Heroclix strain, identified in the 281st year of the 39th millennium by Brother Epistolary Arno Tanis of the Death Watch in the Jericho Reach, seems particularly resistant to extinction, having reappeared dozens of times after seemingly being annihilated. Tanis himself was slain by larval infections less than a day after making his report of a successful mission against them to the Watch Commander, forcing Watch Fortress Erico into lockdown until the creatures could be contained and purged. The second strain of Psyche Neuen, positively identified by the Ordoxenos, is the long-extinct Prospero Strain that resides on the now barren homeworld of the Thousand Suns Space Marine Legion. These creatures were also insectoid and utterly invisible to the human eye. Prospero's ancient city of Tisca was the last outpost of human civilization on the world, after its prior society had been wiped out thousands of standard years ago by the predation of the Psyche Neuen. Tisca was a city where the survivors of the planet-wide cataclysm found refuge from the assault of the Psyche Neuen. The Thousand Suns always suspected some freak upsurge in the warp that triggered an explosion of uncontrolled psychic potential within the Prosperian population, driving the Psyche Neuen into reproductive feeding frenzy. The civilization of Prospero collapsed, and the survivors fled to the city in the mountains. For thousands of Terran years, the people of Tisca endured, while all they had built in the millennium since leaving Terra fell to dust. The surface of Prospero was dotted with the remains of their dead culture. Empty cities were overgrown with forests and vines, and the palace of their kings overrun with wild beasts. The survivors survived by salvaging knowledge and equipment from the destruction to construct techno-psychic arrays and substantial energy sources, which then allowed them to build gigantic hydroponic gardens deep in the caverns of the Ventral Mountain ranges. They survived the Psychonian threat by further developing the very psychic powers that had made them so vulnerable. The Psyche Neuen were drawn to Tisca in their thousands, but the survivors were able to train their most gifted psychers to use their minds to erect invisible barriers of pure thought. Known as kin shields, they were primitive, bombastic powers compared to the subtle art later employed by the Thousand Suns, but they kept the creatures at bay. When Magnus came to Prospero, it was said that the great comet had borne him to the ground, for the impact he had on them was as great as the impact upon the planet's crust. The Tiscan Commune, which was the name the survivors of the Psyche Neuen assault on Prospero gave to their little enclave, was a place rooted in tradition, but they had some skill in wielding the powers of the ether. The young Primarch was schooled in the ways of the Commune, and he quickly learned everything they had to teach. In truth, Magnus had outstripped the learnings of their greatest scholars within a standard year of his arrival. The teachings were so dogmatic, too linear, and too limited for the potential of a Primarch's mind. His intellect was superior in every way to those that taught him. With his teachings, he knew they could be so much more. To increase his understanding of his powerful psychic abilities, Magnus took a walk into the desolation of Prospero. True power came only to those who have fully tested themselves against their greatest fears. Within the commune, the Primarch knew no fear, no hunger or want, and had no drive to push his abilities to their full potential. Magnus needed to be tested to the very limits of his power to see if he had any limits. A year after his coming to Prospero, the Primarch walked from the gates of Tisca and marched into the wilderness for nearly 40 days. Through this observation, Magnus learned to harvest his powers and abilities during his long trek. He also met Ammon, the future captain of the Ninth Fellowship. Despite their discoveries, as was the way of history, nothing of importance was ever achieved without bloodshed. Tragedy soon struck Tisca in the form of the return of the Psyche Neuen menace. Temporarily lax in their mental discipline, the Psyche Neuen were drawn to the large commune of Psychers in Tisca in their thousands, blackening the sky with their numbers as they descended like a plague of ancient time. From there, they swarmed from their darkened caves, organically shifting clouds of deadly ether, the relentless buzzing of thousands of crystalline wings, representing the sound of inevitable doom. The male swarmed in, a hurricane of snapping mandibles and tearing claws, and 50 men died in the time it takes to draw your breath. Behind the males came the females, engorged with clutch upon clutch of immaterial eggs. Their furious reproductive hunger was insatiable, and dozens of the Primarch's friends fell to their knees in horror as they felt the Psyche Neuen eggs take root in their brain. The beasts swirled around them, battering the Prosperian with psychic thrust, scrambling at their mental barrier to seed their minds with their eggs, and only the strongest of men remained. Ammon and 8 of the masters of Tisca stood with the Primarch, and the Psyche Neuen attack came again. Magnus knew this was what he had been seeking all along, a true test of his abilities. He would finally discover whether he had limits. Magnus would see if he was the master of his powers, or was to be found wanting. As the Psyche Neuen came at the Prosperian defenders again, something magnificent happened. The Primarch felt something move within him, feeling change as though an immense power had lain within him, dormant and untapped, surged from his life. As Magnus contemplated the moment of his death, raging fire erupted from his hands. The Primarch hurled torrents of flame into the sky as though he had always known he had this power, and smothered hundreds of Psyche Neuen to ruin with every gesture. Soon the other Tisca masters displayed hence unknown abilities as well, as walls of flame sprang up from their command. Others were able to pluck beasts from the air and dash them on the rocks with the power of their minds. Still other defenders were able to will the vital fluids within the Psyche Neuen to boil within their exoskeletons. Ammon saw images of the future and imminent danger searing through his mind, and he cried words of warning to his fellows, telling them of dangers to come and how they might avoid them. Some of the other defenders sensed the lust within the Psyche Neuen to plant their psychic seeds within the humans' minds, the relentless animal hunger that drove them to feed and procreate. They reached into the minds of the beasts and twisted their perception so that they became blind to humans. With these newfound abilities, the later psychic cult of the Thousand Suns Legion was born. The threat of the Prospero Strain of Psyche Neuen was forever after rendered inert. Psyche Neuen grubs are typically around a meter long and ooze a grayish mucus as they crawl. They are unsettling to behold, as if their motions are out of sync with the reality they are spawned into, and few beings can stomach their presence for long. Clutches of Psyche Neuen grubs are more inclined to hide in some dark corners, safe from aggressors. Making up the overwhelming majority of adult Psyche Neuen, drones resemble giant wasps. each 2 meters long from their mandible to the end of their thorax, capable of swift movement and extremely strong and resilient. Psyche Neuen are also innately psychic and venomous. Their stingers can pierce any armor worn by a demon or man, and in significant numbers, they can overwhelm even the mightiest of warriors. Within their confines of a space hulk, swarms of Psyche Neuen drones cluster in vast caverns and abandoned vaults, emerging to hunt periodically. Thankfully rare, it is postulated by the Magos biologists, scholars of the Death Watch, that the Psyche Neuen breeds that they have titled queens require special conditions to create. The special circumstance that are necessary for a grub to become a queen instead of a drone has never been replicated. Those rare few that have been encountered were sighted aboard Space Hawk Mortis Thal. These beasts are extremely dangerous, not only for their enormous size and ferocious manner, but also for their ability to spread their vile brood across the stars. Large, bloated, potentially psychic, and extremely strong and resilient, a Psyche Neuen queen is a deadly foe, the kind of creature that only the mightiest and most resilient warriors can hope to combat. And those were 40 facts about the warp entities. We learned about vampires and Psyche Neuen. I hope I pronounced Psyche Neuen correctly. I changed the pronunciation a couple times, but that's a hard word to pronounce, so sorry guys. Please subscribe to the channel because we're going to do a warp entities part 2. We're going to be talking more about less common and less talked about warp entities other than your regular demons and all that kind of stuff. So if you guys want to get that, please subscribe to the channel. If you're already a subscriber, you know that we post videos every single day for Warhammer 40K. We want to continue giving you guys awesome Warhammer 40K content, so please jump on over to our Patreon channel. The link is in the description below, or it's going to be there's going to be a link at the end of the video, and a simple $1 a month is going to help us to create more Warhammer 40K content for you guys. And of course, you get extra videos on Patreon, so check that out. This was Gersh1 with One Mind Syndicate, signing out.